I worked nights at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. At first, it was just the flicker of the lights and a few strange glitches on the cameras. But then the calls started, always at the same time, always from the same voice. Now I know why no one else ever finished their shift there. Greetings, every shadow hides a story. Welcome. Under the bed. It happened 3 years ago, in a small town off Highway 41 in northern Wyoming. I had just turned 30, recently divorced, and needed any job that would keep me afloat. The only offer I got was from a gas station that stayed open all night, Thompson's Fuel and Mart. It sat miles from the nearest house, surrounded by flat, endless plains and a line of dead cottonwood trees that looked like black fingers against the sky. My first shift started on a cold October night. The man training me, Rick, was in his late 50s. His face looked like he hadn't slept properly in years. He showed me the basics, how to reset the pumps, how to handle the night ledger, and what to do if the generator failed. His voice was steady until we reached the last part. If you see a white Toyota pull in, he said, don't go outside. Don't even look at it too long. I laughed a little, thinking it was some small-town superstition, but Rick didn't smile back. He just grabbed his coat, said he was done for the night, and left. By midnight, I was alone. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the only sounds came from the wind brushing against the glass door and the occasional creak of the roof. The cameras above the counter flickered once in a while, old wiring, I assumed. At 12:43 a.m., pump 3 activated. The monitor beeped, showing fuel dispensing. But no one had driven in. I stepped to the window, nothing but the highway, empty and still. I reset the pump, thinking it was a glitch. A few minutes later, pump 3 clicked again. Same thing. I checked the camera feed. On the grainy black and white screen, I saw a car parked at pump 3, a white Toyota Camry. But when I looked out the window, the lot was completely empty. My heart started beating harder. I switched through the cameras again. Every angle showed the Toyota, unmoving, engine off, doors slightly open. The number plate was unreadable, blurred like fog. I called Rick. No answer. The phone gave a low crackling sound before the line went dead. Then I noticed something strange on the monitor. In one frame, the driver's door was open wider. In the next, it was shut. I locked the entrance doors, just in case, and turned off the outside lights, trying to convince myself that what I was seeing was a delay in the footage. Still, the camera on pump 3 flickered again, and this time I caught a reflection in the glass, a man standing just outside, wearing a gas station uniform identical to mine. I turned around. No one there. I checked the door, still locked. By 2 a.m., I had stopped looking at the cameras. I kept my head down, pretending to balance the register. That's when I heard the faint chime of the front door bell, the sound it made when someone entered. But the doors were locked. I froze. The bell rang again, clearer this time, followed by slow footsteps, not from outside, but behind the counter. I turned sharply, but all I saw was the open door to the supply room, moving slightly, as if someone had just passed through. I took a flashlight and stepped in. The smell of gasoline was thick. The shelves were lined with old receipts and cleaning rags, nothing unusual, until I noticed one thing on the floor, an old name tag, covered in dust. It said, Rick. I left the flashlight on the ground and backed out of the room. When I returned to the counter, the phone rang. It was the landline, the one Rick told me rarely worked. I hesitated but picked it up. A whispering voice said, "Don't go outside after 3. I slammed the receiver down. The call hadn't come through the line, there was no signal on the display. I looked up at the cameras again. Every screen now showed the same feed, pump 3, the white Toyota still there, but this time, the driver's seat wasn't empty. Someone was sitting inside, staring directly at the camera. I don't remember how long I stood frozen, watching the static flicker around that figure. When dawn came, the Toyota was gone. The pumps were still, and the outside looked normal again, like nothing had happened. Rick never returned for his shifts. The owner told me he'd quit without notice, but when I checked the locker room later that day, his coat was still hanging there, and the keys to his truck were in the pocket. That was the night I realized this station wasn't normal. After that first night, I almost quit. But the pay was decent, and the owner, Mr. Thompson, acted like nothing strange had ever happened there. When I tried to mention the cameras or the car, he just said, "Old systems glitch. Don't worry about it, Bruce." He said it too quickly, like he'd practiced the line before. A few days later, I came back for another night shift. The October wind had picked up, scattering dust and dried leaves across the lot. The air smelled faintly of burnt oil. The fluorescent lights above pump 3 still buzzed, even when I turned off the switch inside. That noise had started to feel like it followed me everywhere. Around 11 p.m., a man in his 60s came in for cigarettes. He wore a heavy brown coat and had a scar under his left eye. When I handed him the pack, he paused, staring out the window. "You working nights now?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He nodded slowly. "Then you'll see it soon enough." "See what?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "That white Toyota. Don't stare at the driver too long. That's how it starts." Before I could ask what he meant, he paid in cash and left. I watched his taillights fade down the empty highway until they disappeared. At 12:15, the lights outside dimmed for a few seconds, then came back on. The power grid here was unstable, so I didn't think much of it. But then I noticed the reflection of headlights in the glass door, faint, unmoving. I checked the monitors. Camera 2 showed the same white Toyota parked by pump 3. The timestamp blinked between 12:16 and 12:17 like the feed couldn't decide which second it was. I grabbed the phone to call the police, but the line was dead again. Only static. I watched the monitor, trying to see if anyone was inside the car. The driver's window was fogged over, but a pale shape moved behind it, just slightly, like someone breathing. The wind outside stopped. Complete silence. Even the buzz of the lights faded. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then the old landline behind the counter rang once. Just once. Not the full tone, a single, broken chime. When I stepped closer, the monitor flickered. For a split second, I saw the interior of the car in full clarity, an empty seat, the steering wheel turned slightly, and something dark splattered on the inside of the windshield. Then the image glitched and went black. I backed away from the counter and turned toward the window. The lot was empty again. The car was gone. But on the glass, just above eye level, there were streaks of moisture, 5 long marks, like a hand pressed from the outside. At 1:40 a.m., I heard footsteps outside the back door. Not heavy, but deliberate, crunching gravel, pacing slowly. I turned off the interior lights and listened. The steps stopped right at the door. A soft knock followed. Then a voice, calm, low, familiar. "Don't leave after 3, Bruce." It was Rick's voice. I froze. My flashlight shook in my hand. "Rick?" I whispered, but no answer came. When I finally opened the door a few inches, there was no one there. Only the faint smell of gasoline, stronger than usual, and a single wet footprint on the concrete, leading away from the door toward the pumps. The rest of the shift passed in silence. The clocks ticked normally again, and by sunrise the station looked almost peaceful. But when I checked the cameras to review the night, something was wrong. Every feed between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock showed the same still frame, the empty parking lot. Not a single car, not even the man who'd come for cigarettes. Later that day, I drove into town to ask around. The local diner had an old wall calendar filled with yellowed newspaper clippings. One caught my eye: gas station employee found dead in vehicle fire, October 12, 2018. The photo beneath it showed a burned white Toyota pulled from a ditch off Highway 41. The article said the man's name was Richard Haynes, age 58. Rick. My stomach turned cold. I left the diner without finishing my coffee. On the drive back, I passed the same stretch of road from the article. The ditch had overgrown grass and a faint black mark on the asphalt, like a scar that would never fade. That night, I told myself I wouldn't go back. But when darkness fell, the phone rang in my apartment, an unlisted number. I almost didn't answer. A static-filled voice whispered, "Shift starts at 10. The line went dead. And even though every instinct told me to stay home, I found myself grabbing my keys and heading back toward Thompson's Fuel and Mart. I didn't tell anyone about the call. Who would believe me? A dead man telling me my shift starts at 10? Still, that night I drove back to the gas station like something was pulling me there. The road felt longer than usual. The air had that same metallic smell, like before a thunderstorm, though the sky was clear. When I arrived, the lights of the station were already on. The front door was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it when I left the day before. Inside, everything looked normal, the shelves stocked, the hum of the refrigerators steady, the cash register asleep in its usual rhythm. But the air felt heavy, like the place hadn't been aired out in years. On the counter lay the logbook we used to sign our shifts. I flipped to the last page and froze. Someone had written a single line in dark pen. "Don't listen to the voices." The handwriting looked shaky, but the ink was fresh. At midnight, the radio on the shelf behind the counter came to life. I hadn't turned it on. It crackled, switching frequencies like it was searching for a station. Then, beneath the static, I heard a faint whisper. At first it was only noise, hissing, broken words, but then, clearly, it said my name. "Bruce, don't leave." I switched it off, pulled the plug, and it still kept whispering. The voice changed, deeper now, almost echoing inside my head rather than the room. I carried it outside, dropped it near the dumpster, and when I came back, the hum of the pump started up again. Pump 3. Always pump 3. I checked the monitor. The camera showed nothing unusual, but the fuel counter on the screen climbed rapidly, like someone was filling a tank. When I stepped outside, the pump handle was lifted and gasoline poured slowly onto the pavement. The smell burned my nose. I shut the valve and wiped the handle. It was warm, as if someone had been holding it moments before. Back inside, I noticed a low hiss from the ceiling vent. At first I thought it was the wind, but when I turned the fan off, the sound didn't stop. It wasn't air. It was whispering, short, broken phrases, almost forming words but not quite. I stood under the vent, trying to listen. Then one word became clear. Return. The clock on the wall read 1:27 a.m. I sat behind the counter, trying to focus on paperwork, anything that would make time move faster. Then the phone rang. The old rotary one, the same line that had rung that first night. I stared at it, too afraid to touch it. On the fifth ring, I picked it up. "Rick?" I whispered. Silence. Then a faint male voice answered. "You shouldn't be here." "Who is this?" But instead of replying, the line filled with noise, like wind rushing through a tunnel. And beneath that, dozens of overlapping voices, whispering in unison. My name again, repeated over and over, building into a low, rhythmic hum that made the light fixtures shake. I dropped the phone and stepped back. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. When I dared to look at the monitors, every screen showed the same feed, the main door camera. But in the image, I wasn't alone. Behind the counter, just a few feet from where I stood, a shadow moved. It wasn't a shape, more like a smear of darkness, as if someone stood between the light and the lens. I turned slowly. Nothing there. But the smell of gasoline grew stronger. It was seeping through the floor tiles, forming a dark, spreading stain. I backed away, feeling dizzy. The hum from the vent turned into a deep vibrating tone, shaking the shelves. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Silence again. The stain on the floor was gone, dry as before. The clock read 2:59 a.m. I sat there, breathing hard, waiting for the dawn. When morning came, I checked the tape recordings from the cameras. They were all blank. Not erased, just empty, as if nothing had been filmed at all. Before leaving, I went to the storage room to put away the cleaning supplies. On the shelf lay a small black notebook, covered in dust. It wasn't mine. Inside were old entries written by someone with cramped handwriting. The first page read, "They speak through the frequency. Each night they get closer." The last page had only one line. "Don't answer the call at 3:17. I closed the book and left it where I found it. On my way out, I noticed the radio I'd thrown outside. It was sitting neatly on the counter again, plugged in, the red light glowing. The static started before I reached the door. "See you tonight, Bruce." I barely slept the next day. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that static whispering my name. By evening, I decided to go back one last time, not for work, but for answers. I told myself I'd stay until 3:17 a.m., the exact time written in the notebook, just to see what really happened. After that, I'd quit for good. The drive felt heavier than ever. The wind was still, the fields on both sides frozen under the pale moonlight. When I reached the gas station, the lights were already on again, even though the schedule said power didn't come on until I flipped the main breaker. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything smelled faintly of fuel and dust. I started the generator manually, checked the pumps, and turned off the radio that had somehow turned itself on again. The air was colder than usual, and the silence outside pressed against the windows like a weight. I kept glancing at the clock. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. Around 2:40 a.m., I began to feel that strange vibration in the air again, like the static had returned, but without sound. The shelves trembled slightly. A can of oil rolled off one and hit the floor with a metallic clang that echoed through the store. Then, without warning, the phone rang. I didn't answer. The bell rang again, louder this time. My pulse spiked. I remembered the note, "Don't answer the call at 3:17. But the clock showed 2:57. I still had 20 minutes. I lifted the receiver slowly. Nothing, just silence. Then a voice whispered, "Too early, Bruce." The line went dead. I stood there staring at the clock, every second stretching longer than it should. My reflection in the window looked pale and distant, almost detached from me. The hum from the ceiling vents grew louder, merging with the faint vibration from the floor. I turned to the monitors, all 6 screens flickered at once. Pump 3. Again. The white Toyota appeared on the grainy feed, headlights off, parked in the same spot as before. The timestamp froze at 3:16. The second hand of the wall clock stopped moving. I could hear only my heartbeat and the faint tick that never reached the next minute. The phone started ringing again, long, drawn-out tones this time. My hand hovered over the receiver, shaking. I told myself I wouldn't touch it. But the longer it rang, the more the air in the room seemed to pulse with it, like every sound and light was connected to that phone. At exactly 3:17, the ringing stopped. The power cut out. The entire station fell into darkness, except for the faint glow from the monitors. The camera feed on pump 3 shifted, the car door opened slowly, and a man stepped out. He was wearing the same uniform I was, same jacket, same name tag. His face was hidden in shadow, but his movements were deliberate, calm, like he knew exactly where he was going. He stopped right in front of the camera, leaned close, and whispered something. The microphone didn't pick it up, but I could read his lips. "Your shift isn't over." Then he looked directly toward me, not at the camera, but through it, as if he knew I was watching. I stumbled back and nearly fell against the counter. The front door chime rang even though no one had entered. Outside, the faint outline of the Toyota reflected in the glass. I could see the driver's door still open, and behind it, a second figure sitting in the passenger seat, unmoving, head tilted toward the store. The lights flickered once more, and suddenly everything was bright again. The lot outside was empty. No car. No movement. The clock hands jumped forward, 3:18. The power returned with a low mechanical hum. I sat there for what felt like hours before sunrise. When I finally looked at the phone, the receiver was off the hook. I don't remember touching it. At dawn, I went outside for air. The ground around pump 3 was damp, though it hadn't rained. I crouched down and noticed the dark stains forming the shape of a boot print. My boot print. Only I hadn't stepped there that night. When I looked back at the glass door, I saw my reflection, or what I thought was mine. The man in the reflection was wearing my uniform, but there was something wrong with his face. His expression didn't match mine. He was smiling. I dropped my keys and ran to my car. My hands were shaking so badly I barely started the engine. As I pulled onto the highway, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The gas station lights flickered once, then went out completely, leaving nothing but the dark shape of the sign against the morning sky. That was the last time I ever saw Thompson's Fuel and Mart. But that night still replays in my head. Sometimes, when my phone rings after midnight, I don't answer. The sound is the same, that long, drawn-out tone, and every time I hear it, I remember the whisper that followed. Your shift isn't over. It's been 2 weeks since that night. I moved to a different town, got a day job at a small repair shop, and told myself I'd never think about that gas station again. But I haven't slept more than a few hours at a time. Every night around 3:17, I wake up to the sound of a phone ringing, not mine, but the same old landline tone from Thompson's Fuel and Mart. It fades after 3 rings, and then the silence feels heavier than the dark. Yesterday morning, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. No name, no return address, just my name and handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single photograph, the gas station, taken at night. In the window's reflection, I could see someone standing behind the counter. It was me. The photo was dated 3 days ago. I told myself it had to be a prank. Maybe the owner trying to scare me, maybe someone found the security tapes. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. By evening, I was driving back down Highway 41. The air was dry, and the sunset bled across the fields like fire. When I reached the turnoff, I almost didn't recognize the place. The sign was half broken, the lights off, the windows boarded. The station looked abandoned. I parked at the edge of the lot and sat there for a long time. No movement. No sound. Just the wind. I finally got out, the gravel crunching under my boots. The front door was locked, but the side door to the storage room stood half open. I stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and stale gasoline. My flashlight beam swept across shelves of old supplies, cobwebs, a toppled open 24 hours sign. The counter still had the same register, the same logbook, open to a page I hadn't seen before. One fresh line of writing stood out in dark ink. Welcome back, Bruce. I froze. My breath came out white in the cold air. The radio behind the counter flickered on with a soft pop. Static filled the room, but beneath it came a faint sound, footsteps, steady and rhythmic. They were coming from the monitor room. I followed the sound down the narrow hallway. The door was ajar, light spilling through the crack. Inside, every monitor was on. But instead of showing the empty lot, they all showed the same angle, pump 3, the white Toyota sitting perfectly still under the flickering light. The timestamp read 3:16. I checked my watch. 3:16 exactly. The screen started to shake, the static deepening. On one of the monitors, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, same uniform, same movements. He looked straight at the camera, then toward me. The feed cut to black, replaced by a single line of text flashing across all 6 screens. Shift resumed. The air turned icy. I backed away toward the exit, but the hallway seemed longer than before. The lights above began to flicker, one by one. The radio crackled again. Through the noise, a voice came, calm and low. Clock in, Bruce. The sound of the pump starting up filled the silence outside. I ran through the front door, it swung open easily now, and stepped into the lot. The Toyota was there, headlights on. The engine idled softly, though no one sat behind the wheel. I should have left. I should have run. But instead, I walked closer. The driver's door creaked open, slow and heavy, and the interior light revealed a set of keys hanging from the ignition. My name tag was on the seat. It was covered in a thin layer of dust. I reached for it, and at that moment, everything stopped: the wind, the hum of the pumps, even the distant sounds of the night. The world felt frozen. I turned back toward the station. Through the glass door, I saw someone standing behind the counter. It was me. He was holding the phone to his ear, staring at the cameras. Then, slowly, he smiled, the same smile I'd seen in the reflection 2 weeks earlier. The lights inside went dark, leaving only that faint outline against the glass. I don't remember hearing the car start, but when I blinked, the Toyota's headlights were gone. Everything was black again. 3 days later, police arrived after receiving a report about an abandoned vehicle near Thompson's Fuel and Mart. They found the white Toyota parked by pump 3. Inside were keys, a half-empty coffee cup, and a folded page torn from the station's logbook. It read, "My name is Bruce. If you see the white Toyota, don't go outside." The authorities declared the station permanently closed. The owner moved away. Locals say no one has touched the place since. But sometimes, drivers passing that stretch of Highway 41 claim they still see lights flickering in the distance, and a man standing under the canopy, wiping the same pump, hour after hour. Always at 3:17 a.m.